Merry Christmas, not for everyone. On December 25, 2025, while families around the world were unwrapping gifts, President Donald Trump took to Truth Social to announce a powerful and deadly U.S. strike against alleged ISIS terrorists in the northwestern parts of Nigeria. He claimed it was in response to attacks on Christians, and reports confirm the Nigerian government gave the green light. But is this really about fighting terrorism, or is it the opening act in a bigger play for control in Africa? Today, we're diving deep into the distrust swirling around this move, the potential sinister motives, and how it fits into America's long history of meddling in sovereign nations. If you're tired of the official narrative, stick around. This could change how you see U.S. foreign policy forever. Hit that like button if you're ready for the truth, and subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Let's start with the facts. Trump's post read: Tonight, at my direction as Commander-in-Chief, the United States launched a powerful and deadly strike against ISIS terrorist scum in northwest Nigeria, who have been targeting and viciously killing primarily innocent Christians. The U.S. military confirmed airstrikes on Islamic State West Africa province Establapa targets in Sokoto State, near the border with Niger. Nigeria's government not only approved it but cooperated to avoid unilateral U.S. action. According to sources, ISWAP has indeed been active, clashing with Boko Haram and carrying out attacks that have killed hundreds, including Christians during holidays. But here's where the red flags start waving. Trump has been amplifying claims of Christian persecution in Nigeria for years, often echoed by right-wing U.S. groups. While violence is real, critics argue it's being weaponized to justify intervention. And with Trump's America First rhetoric, why the sudden interest in Africa's internal conflicts? Let's unpack the real agenda many are whispering about. First up, is this about pressuring Nigeria to host a U.S. military base for access to the Sahel? The Sahel, stretching across Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, has seen a surge in anti-Western sentiment. These countries formed the Alliance of Sahel States (AES) in 2024, kicking out French forces and cozying up to Russia for security. The AES is rich in resources and represents a growing bloc that's rejecting U.S. and European influence. Reports suggest the U.S. is eyeing Nigeria as a stable partner to re-establish a foothold, potentially using bases to monitor or destabilize this alliance. Nigeria's strategic location bordering the Sahel makes it a perfect launch pad. Coincidence that this strike happens right on the edge of that volatile zone? Second, access to critical and rare earth minerals. The Sahel and Nigeria are treasure troves: gold in Mali and Burkina Faso, uranium in Niger, 5% of global reserves, lithium, and more. The U.S. is hungry for these to fuel its tech, energy, and defense industries. Especially as it competes in the global green energy race, U.S. policy shifts are favoring capable states like Nigeria for mineral deals, amending trade acts to secure profits. Is bombing ISIS a smokescreen to embed U.S. interests deeper? Third, countering China and Russia. This one's straight from the playbook of former AFRICOM Commander General Michael Langley. In testimonies and statements, Langley repeatedly warned about China's exploitative investments and Russia's coercive military presence in Africa, including private companies like Wagner, now Africa Corps. He emphasized deterring these powers from expanding on the continent. With Russia bolstering the AES through security pacts and China building infrastructure, the U.S. sees its influence slipping. A strike in Nigeria sends a message: America's back in the game, ready to flex muscle against rivals. This isn't new. History shows the U.S. crafting narratives to justify interventions. Take Venezuela. Trump and now his administration have pushed false claims of election fraud and human rights abuses to ramp up sanctions and threats, all while eyeing its massive oil reserves. Sound familiar? Iran. The U.S. launched a Stuxnet cyber attack on its civilian nuclear facilities, violating international law under the guise of preventing weapons development despite no solid evidence. Libya. In 2011, the U.S. and NATO allies bombed Gaddafi's regime, claiming he was massacring civilians. The result? A destabilized nation, civil war, and Western access to oil. Gaddafi's warnings about jihadists flooding in, ignored, and the classic Iraq's weapons of mass destruction in 2003, a total fabrication to invade and seize oil fields, leading to over 1 million deaths. The pattern is clear: terrorism or humanitarian crisis as pretext for resource grabs and geopolitical dominance. Now, with ISIS in Nigeria, many see the same script unfolding in West Africa. Global distrust is at an all-time high. No one buys the hero narrative anymore. So, is Trump's Christmas strike a win against terror, or the latest chapter in US imperialism? The evidence points to deeper motives: bases, minerals, and countering rivals. As the world watches, one thing's certain: the West's credibility is crumbling. What do you think? Is this justified or another power play? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, share this video to spread awareness, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more unfiltered analysis. Thanks for watching, stay vigilant, and I'll see you in the next one.